Okay, boys and girls, so today we are reading Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, and we're still reading chapter 7, and we are up to page 122, the top paragraph on 122. Okay, so I think if you remember previously, Hermione was called a mudblood. And we figured out that mudblood is something really unkind to say to somebody who is muggle-born. So her parents aren't magic parents; they're muggles. And a mudblood is kind of like a racist thing, what you would call somebody who didn't have parents who were of pure blood. "It's a disgusting thing to call someone," said Ron, wiping his sweaty brow with a shaking hand. "Dirty blood, see? Common blood. It's mad. Most wizards these days are half-blood anyway. If we hadn't married muggles, we'd have died out." He retched and ducked out of sight again. Well, I don't blame you for trying to curse him, Ron," said Hagrid loudly, over the thuds of more slugs hitting the basin. "But maybe it was a good thing your wand backfired. 'Spect Lucius Malfoy would have come marching up to the school if you'd cursed his son. Least you're not in trouble." Harry would have pointed out that trouble didn't come much worse than having slugs pouring out of your mouth, but he couldn't. Hagrid's treacle toffee had cemented his jaws together. "Harry," said Hagrid suddenly, as though struck by a sudden thought, "got a bone to pick with you. I've heard you've been giving out signed photos. How come I haven't got one?" Furious, Harry wrenched his teeth apart. "I have not been giving out signed photos," he said hotly. "If Lockhart's still putting that about..." But then he saw Hagrid was laughing. "I'm only joking," he said, patting Harry genially on the back, sending him face first into the table. "I knew you hadn't really. I told Lockhart you didn't need to. You're more famous than him without trying." "Betty didn't like that," said Harry, sitting up and rubbing his chin. "Don't think he did," said Harry, his eyes twinkling. "And then I told him I'd never read one of his books, and he decided to go. Treacle toffee, Ron?" he added, as Ron reappeared. "No thanks," said Ron weakly. "Better not risk it." "Come and see what I've been growing," said Hagrid, as Harry and Hermione finished the last of their tea. In the small vegetable patch behind Hagrid's house were a dozen of the largest pumpkins Harry had ever seen. Each was the size of a large boulder. "Getting on well, aren't they?" said Hagrid happily. "For the Halloween feast. Should be big enough by then." "What have you been feeding them?" said Harry. Hagrid looked over his shoulder to check that they were alone. "Well, I've been giving them, a bit of help." Harry noticed Hagrid's flowery pink umbrella leaning against the back wall of the cabin. Harry had reason to believe before now that this umbrella was not all it looked. In fact, he had a strong impression that Hagrid's old school wand was concealed inside it. Hagrid wasn't supposed to use magic. He had been expelled from Hogwarts in his 3rd year, but Harry had never found out why. Any mention of the matter, and Hagrid would clear his throat loudly and become mysteriously deaf until the subject was changed. "An engorgement charm, I suppose," said Hermione, halfway between disapproval and amusement. "Well, you've done a good job on them." "That's what your little sister said," said Hagrid, nodding at Ron. "Met her just yesterday." Hagrid looked sideways at Harry, his beard twitching. "Said she was just looking round the grounds, but I reckon she was hoping she might run into someone else at my house." He winked at Harry. "If you ask me, she wouldn't Say no to a sign. Oh, shut up, said Harry. Ron snorted with laughter, and the ground was sprayed with slugs. Watch it, Hagrid roared, pulling Ron away from his precious pumpkins. It was nearly lunchtime, and as Hagrid had only one bit of treacle toffee since dawn, he was keen to go back to school to eat. And as Harry had only had one bit of treacle toffee since dawn, he was keen to go back to school to eat. They said goodbye to Hagrid and walked back up to the castle. Ron hiccoughing occasionally, but only bringing up 2 very small slugs. They had barely set foot in the cool entrance hall when a voice rang out. There you are, Potter, Weasley. Professor McGonagall was walking towards them, looking stern. You will both do your detentions this evening. What are we doing, Professor? Said Ron nervously, suppressing a burp. You will be polishing the silver in the trophy room with Mr. Filch, said Professor McGonagall. And no magic, Weasley. Elbow grease. Ron gulped. Argus Filch, the caretaker, was loathed by every student in the school. And you, Potter, will be helping Professor Lockhart answer his fan mail, said Professor McGonagall. Oh no, can't I go to the trophy room too? Said Harry desperately. Certainly not, said Professor McGonagall, raising her eyebrows. Professor Lockhart requested you particularly. 8 o'clock sharp, both of you. Harry and Ron slouched into the great hall in states of deepest gloom. Hermione behind them, wearing a, well, you did break school rules sort of expression. Harry didn't fancy his shepherd's pie as much as he'd thought. Both he and Ron felt they'd got the worst deal. Filch'll have me all night, said Ron heavily. No magic. There must be about 100 cups in that room. I'm not good at muggle cleaning. I'd swap any time, said Harry hollowly. I've had loads of practice with the Dursleys, answering Lockhart's fan mail. He'll be a nightmare. Saturday afternoon seemed to melt away, and in what seemed like no time, it was 5 minutes to 8, and Harry was dragging his feet along the second floor corridor to Lockhart's office. He gritted his teeth and knocked. The door flew open at once. Lockhart beamed down at him. Ah, here's the scallywag, he said. Come in. Harry, come in. Shining brightly on the walls shining brightly on the walls by the light of many candles were countless framed photographs of Lockhart. He had even signed a few of them. Another large pile lay on his desk. You can address the envelopes, Lockhart told Harry, as though this was a huge treat. The first one's to Gladys Goodchin. Bless her. Huge fan of mine. The minutes snailed by. Harry let Lockhart's voice wash over him, occasionally saying, and right, and yeah. Now and then he caught a phrase like, fame's a fickle friend, Harry, or celebrity is as celebrity does, remember that? The candles burned lower and lower, making the light dance over the many moving faces of Lockhart watching him. Harry moved his aching hand over what felt like the 1,000th envelope, writing out Veronica Smethly's address. It must be nearly time to leave, Harry thought miserably. Please let it be nearly time. And then he heard something quite apart from the spitting of the dying candles and Lockhart's prattle about his fans. It was a voice to chill the bone marrow, a voice of breathtaking ice-cold venom. Come to me, let me rip you, let me tear you, let me kill you. Harry gave a huge jump, and a large lilac blot appeared on Veronica Smethly's street. What? He said loudly. I know, said Lockhart. 6 solid months at the top of the bestseller list. Broke all records. No, said Harry frantically. That voice. Sorry, said Lockhart, looking puzzled. What voice? That voice that said, didn't you hear it? Lockhart was looking at Harry in high astonishment. What are you talking about, Harry? Perhaps you're getting a little drowsy. Great Scott, look at the time. We've been here nearly 4 hours. I'd never have believed it. The time's flown, hasn't it? Harry didn't answer. He was straining his ears to hear the voice again, but there was no sound now except for Lockhart telling him he mustn't expect a treat like this every time he got detention. Feeling dazed, Harry left. It was so late that the Gryffindor common room was almost empty. Harry went straight up to the dormitory. Ron wasn't back yet. Harry pulled on his pyjamas, got into bed and waited half an hour later. Ron arrived, nursing his right arm and bringing a strong smell of polish into the darkened room. My muscles have all seized up, he groaned, sinking on his bed. 14 times he made me buff up the Quidditch Cup before he was satisfied. And then I had another slug attack all over a special award for services to the school. Took ages to shift the slime. How was it with Lockhart? Keeping his voice low, so as to not wake Neville, Dean and Seamus, Harry told Ron exactly what he heard. And Lockhart said he couldn't hear it, said Ron. Harry could see him frowning in the moonlight. Do you think he was lying? But I don't get it. Even someone invisible would have had to open the door. I know, said Harry, lying back in his 4-poster and staring at the canopy above him. I don't get it either. And boys and girls, that is the end of chapter 7. So we're going to stop our video there.